Continuing from last chapter, the Emperor of the Soul and Void-swallowing Flame joined forces and seized the imperial-grade primordial pill. In the eerie, wind-swept mountains, the allied forces filled the landscape. However, Gu Yuan and his companions stood with grim expressions before the ruins of a massive gate. Amid the rubble, faint traces of spatial disturbances could still be sensed. The passage to the Soul Realm has been completely destroyed, Gu Yuan said, his face dark and serious. He glanced at the others before continuing, "Moreover, my probing has revealed that the Soul Clan's dimension has already been hidden. It seems they were well prepared." Xiao Yan exhaled slowly, his face heavy with concern. He hadn't anticipated that the situation would become so dire. With the Soul Clan completely concealing their space, even someone like Gu Yuan couldn't locate them in a short time. Though the Soul Clan couldn't stay hidden forever, they only needed to remain out of reach until Emperor of the Soul refined the imperial-grade primordial pill. By then, the coalition would be at a severe disadvantage. "We've already sent people to search for other passages to the Soul Realm," Yan Jin spoke up. Gu Yuan shook his head slightly. Since the Soul Clan was prepared, they wouldn't leave such a fatal flaw. "We brought our entire army, yet we can't even find a way in. This operation has failed. So, what do we do now?" Lang asked after a moment of silence, his voice a bit hoarse. "Now, all we can do is wait and see whose luck prevails," Gu Yuan sighed. "Wait for what?" Lang was puzzled. "There's a chance that refining the imperial-grade primordial pill could fail. Our only hope now is that Emperor of the Soul can't successfully refine it. As long as he doesn't ascend to the level of Do Di, we still have a chance. But if he succeeds..." Gu Yuan paused, then added, "It will be the end of us." The group fell silent, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on their hearts. They had unknowingly reached a point where their fate seemed sealed. "Retreat. Leave some scouts to keep an eye on this place." Gu Yuan waved his hand and began walking slowly toward the rear. "During this time, I will do my utmost to locate the hidden Soul Realm. If we're lucky and find it soon, we can decide whether to make a desperate charge and engage them in a final battle." Hearing Gu Yuan's words, everyone fell silent, understanding that there were no more choices left for them. Xiao Yan let out a long sigh as he gazed at Gu Yuan's slightly weary figure. The 8 ancient clans had fought over the ancient emperor's cave mansion so many times. But in the end, the Soul Clan still managed to seize the greatest advantage. "Let's go." Xiao Yan grasped the slightly cool jade hands of Sun Er and Kai Lin, shook his head, and led his people away. The vast coalition forces gradually withdrew from the mountains. Though some information hadn't spread, the oppressive atmosphere naturally permeated the ranks, leaving the entire coalition feeling stifled. The army finally retreated to the headquarters of the Sky Mansion Alliance. Although the expedition to the Ancient Emperor's cave mansion had ended in failure, the coalition didn't disband. Everyone knew that against Emperor of the Soul, who now possessed the imperial-grade primordial pill, their only hope was to stay united. To scatter would mean certain death. As a result, the coalition forces remained stationed around the Sky Mansion Alliance headquarters, constantly monitoring the movements in the Central Plains. As the coalition settled in, time began to pass slowly, with many growing anxious in the wait. However, despite the passing days, there was still no news from Gu Yuan, who was searching for the hidden Soul Realm. This lack of progress only deepened the despair in many hearts. The longer Emperor of the Soul has to refine the imperial-grade primordial pill, the more perilous it becomes for the coalition forces. Despite their growing anxiety, they all understood that worrying would do nothing to change the course of events. In the Star Realm, Xiao Yan lifted his gaze to the enormous plaza suspended in the distant sky. This plaza had been relocated from the Ancient Emperor's dimension by Zhu Kuan. On it stood a colossal statue, towering over 10,000 feet. Though the statue seemed unremarkable at first glance, its sheer size was enough to leave anyone who saw it in awe. "It's been a month." As he stared at the massive plaza floating in the sky, Xiao Yan couldn't help but mutter to himself. A whole month had passed since Emperor of the Soul seized the imperial-grade primordial pill. During this month, the Soul Clan had seemingly vanished from the world without a trace. There hadn't been a single piece of news. Some outsiders, unaware of the full situation, even thought that the Soul Clan had been defeated by the coalition. Many forces came forward to offer their congratulations, but Xiao Yan and the others were in no mood to entertain them. They sent people to give a brief reception before dismissing the visitors. "Brother Xiao Yan." A soft voice came from behind him. Xiao Yan turned his head and smiled faintly at the girl approaching with graceful steps, her delicate features as beautiful as a painting. "Any news from Uncle Gu?" Xiao Yan asked, but seeing Sun Er shake her head, he sighed in disappointment, closing his eyes in weariness. This feeling of waiting helplessly was truly unbearable. Standing before Xiao Yan, Sun Er gazed at the young man whose face showed signs of fatigue. She gently leaned into his chest, tilting her delicate face upward. Her cool jade-like hands softly massaged Xiao Yan's temples, trying to ease some of his weariness. Inhaling the girl's enticing fragrance, Xiao Yan relaxed his arms, wrapping them around her slender waist. He buried his face in Sun Er's hair and murmured, "After all these years of effort, are we really going to fail in the end? Brother Xiao Yan has already achieved so much." Sun Er smiled gently and whispered, "No matter how this ends, Brother Xiao Yan is the most successful person in the hearts of many." "But it feels like a failure," Xiao Yan said with a bitter smile. "Didn't Brother Xiao Yan once say that only by letting go can you truly grasp what matters, that the key to freedom is knowing when to let go and when to hold on?" Sun Er's voice was soft and soothing. "This isn't like the past. If I let go now, it won't just be the Sky Mansion Alliance that suffers. It will be the Gu clan, the Lei clan, and the Yin clan too." Xiao Yan took a deep breath, lifted his head, and stared at the bright moon in the sky. "Sometimes you can hold on, but you just can't let go." Seeing the determination return to his face, Sun Er bit her lip lightly, nestling closer into Xiao Yan's embrace, a stunning smile of breathtaking beauty gracing her features. "Brother Xiao Yan, we will succeed." Time passed, and another half-month slipped by, deepening the anxiety in everyone's hearts. During this time, the Soul Clan remained silent, as if they had completely vanished. In the Grand Hall of the Alliance, the coalition's leaders sat together, their brows furrowed with worry. With each passing day, their unease grew stronger. In the oppressive atmosphere of the hall, Xiao Yan sighed softly. The frustration of being unable to do anything but wait for the Soul Clan to reappear was becoming unbearable. Damn it! Are those bastards ever going to come out? If it's a fight they want, we'll fight. The Lei clan will go all out. This waiting is suffocating. Lei Ying suddenly slammed his hand on the table, shattering it into dust. He stood up abruptly, gritting his teeth in anger. "Fight who? Where? Who will you fight?" Yin Jin, sitting nearby, frowned and replied. Lei Ying gritted his teeth, but ultimately let out a defeated sigh, slumping back into his seat. The Soul Clan was hiding away, refusing to come out. Who could he challenge to a fight? Everyone. Xiao Yan's gaze swept across the grand hall. He was about to say something uplifting when the space within the hall rippled, revealing the figure of Gu Yuan. As soon as Gu Yuan appeared, everyone present abruptly stood up, urgently asking, "Is there news?" Gu Yuan's expression was exceptionally solemn. He slowly nodded, but before anyone could express their joy, he continued, "We've discovered the hidden location of the Soul Realm, but it's already too late." Hearing this, it was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over everyone. The excitement on their faces vanished instantly. "What do you mean, Uncle Gu?" Xiao Yan hesitated for a moment before speaking. Gu Yuan let out a soft sigh, then cast his gaze towards the sky above the central plains. And just as he did, the entire space across the central plains suddenly began to tremble violently. Xiao Yan and the others noticed this scene as well. They hurriedly rushed out of the grand hall and looked towards the distant sky. There, a black halo had suddenly appeared. As soon as it manifested, it spread at an astonishing speed, enveloping the entire central plains. As this black halo appeared, the energy of heaven and earth across the central plains began to boil. Countless powerful beings looked up in shock, staring at the sky. Under the gaze of countless people in the central plains, The black light in the sky started to writhe and eventually transformed into a colossal light cauldron. The size of the cauldron was beyond description. It seemed as though the entire central plains had been encompassed within it. What is this? Seeing the anomaly in the sky, Xiao Yan and the others immediately felt their expressions change. Within that boundless light, they sensed a familiar presence, that of Emperor of the Soul. Emperor of the Soul has already begun merging with the imperial-grade primordial pill. Now, he intends to use the central plains as his cauldron, living beings as ingredients, heaven and earth as the fire, and his own body as the pill. Gu Yuan's tightly clenched fists trembled as his deep voice echoed in everyone's ears. He plans to refine that imperial-grade primordial pill into a true imperial pill, and once the pill is complete, it will be the moment he ascends to the rank of Do Di. We've all underestimated the ambition of the Emperor of the Soul. Hearing Gu Yuan's words, everyone present drew in a sharp breath, their eyes filled with shock. Refining an imperial-grade pill? Is there really anyone in the current world capable of such a feat? The Emperor of the Soul isn't even an alchemist. How could he possibly achieve this? The pill is already in its primordial form. The most crucial steps in the alchemy process have already been completed by the Tuoshe Ancient Emperor. If the Emperor of the Soul manages to complete the final step and turn this imperial-grade primordial pill into a true imperial-grade pill, it's not impossible for him to succeed. Xiao Yan licked his lips and spoke slowly. We've indeed underestimated the ambition of the Emperor of the Soul. The imperial-grade primordial pill is powerful, but it only offers a chance for him to break through to the Do Di level. However, if he refines it into a true imperial-grade pill, that chance will increase exponentially. One could even say that once he has the completed pill, he will be able to step across the barrier that has blocked him for over 1,000 years. Hearing these words from Xiao Yan, who was considered the foremost alchemist on the continent of Do Qi, those who had harbored doubts fell silent. It turned out that the Emperor of the Soul wasn't just after the imperial-grade primordial pill. What he truly sought was a completed imperial-grade pill. So, doesn't this present us with a good opportunity? Lang said in a deep voice. Since the Emperor of the Soul needs to complete the final step of refining the pill, he'll have to reveal himself. We can strike then and stop him. The current Emperor of the Soul has already used some secret technique to completely merge with the imperial-grade primordial pill. Even if I were to join forces with Zhu Kuan, I'm afraid we still wouldn't be able to stop him. Gu Yuan shook his head, pausing for a moment before continuing. I believe that if the final step of refining the imperial-grade pill weren't so crucial right now, the Soul Clan would have already launched a full-scale attack. Upon hearing these words, everyone felt a chill in their hearts. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. At first, they were still evenly matched, and with Zhu Kuan's arrival, the allied forces even gained the upper hand. But now, in such a short time, that advantage had completely vanished. So what do? Are we just going to watch him really refine the imperial-grade primordial pill into an imperial-grade pill? We still have a chance if we act now, but once the final step is completed, the Emperor of the Soul will be unstoppable, Lei Ying said gravely. Hearing his words, everyone nodded in agreement. The situation had reached its worst point. If they didn't act soon, it would truly be the end. Gu Yuan stood with his hands behind his back, his face dark as he stared at the enormous, indescribable light cauldron in the sky above the central plains. After a moment, he spoke, "For now, let's wait and see. Refining an imperial-grade pill isn't something that can be done in a day or two. We need to plan the best moment to strike." Hearing this, the group pondered for a moment before nodding. Although the situation was dire, they couldn't afford to lose their composure. Meanwhile, the central plains had fallen into turmoil, and the source of the disturbance was naturally the massive light cauldron forming in the sky. The faint ripples emanating from it left many powerful beings feeling uneasy. About half a day after the appearance of the light cauldron, black rays of light suddenly emerged from the distant horizon. Under countless gazes, these rays shot out, forming an overwhelming web of black beams in the sky. This web of beams created an enormous formation, and within its center, a figure with long, loose hair appeared. Emperor of the Soul. Upon seeing the figure hidden within the formation, Gu Yuan and the others, who had been closely monitoring the situation, felt their pupils contract. Their gazes immediately locked onto the formation. Gu Yuan, do you regret not agreeing to cooperate with me back then? A voice echoed from within the formation, piercing through the clouds and resounding across the central plains. It carried a terrifying pressure that seemed to permeate every corner of the land. Gu Yuan's face was as still as water, his hands clenched tightly, but he remained silent. Years of planning. It's time to reap the rewards. 1,000 years of struggle, and in the end, it is I who will emerge victorious. As the Emperor of the Soul's words fell, beams of light suddenly shot out from the massive formation covering the central plains. These beams penetrated the ground in various locations across the land. When the beams struck the earth, the entire central plains seemed to tremble violently, as if an earthquake had suddenly erupted. In a certain part of the central plains, a city stood proudly on the plains, teeming with crowds of people. A city full of life and vitality. However, this lively atmosphere did not last long. As the ground began to quake, a massive crack suddenly spread through the city. Countless powerful figures soared into the air in shock, but before they could react, black beams of light burst from the ground, enveloping the entire city. Under the shroud of the black light beams, bodies throughout the city suddenly exploded, erupting into blood mist and shattered flesh. The sudden catastrophe left everyone in stunned silence, staring at the people who had just been beside them, now reduced to nothing but a cloud of blood mist. A deep, overwhelming fear and horror surged through their hearts like a tidal wave. In their fear, the city descended into chaos. Everyone was frantically trying to escape through the city gates, while those with greater strength flew into the air. But before they could even reach the gates, the panic of self-destruction spread rapidly. In an instant, the city was engulfed in a thick mist of blood, with sticky blood and shattered flesh covering more than half of the city. The black pillar of light enveloped the city, now turned into a sea of blood. Streams of blood-red energy slowly rose into the sky, transforming into crimson beams that shot up, merging into the massive formation that covered the central plains. As the blood-red light dissipated and the black light faded, what remained was a dead city, reeking of blood so strongly it was nauseating. At the city gates, a group of people who were just about to enter the city saw the gates slowly open. Their faces had barely begun to show joy when their eyes were filled with the sight of the surging sea of blood. Immediately, piercing screams rang out. The same scene was unfolding in many places across the central plains at that moment. The thick stench of blood almost entirely filled the sky over the central plains, even tainting the very air with a heavy metallic scent. Panic swept across the entire central plains. In a city not far from the headquarters of the Sky Mansion Alliance, Gu Yuan, Xiao Yan, and the others appeared in the sky, their faces dark as they looked down at the sea of blood spreading through the city below. What's going on? Yin Jin asked, taking a deep breath at the sight. Gu Yuan's face was ashen as he waved his sleeve, forcibly widening the cracks in the city, dispersing the sea of blood. As the cracks widened, a blood-red formation appeared beneath the ground, filled with skeletal remains, from which a sinister aura shot up into the sky. The devouring spirit life extinguishing formation. Yin Jin and the others' faces immediately filled with shock as they recognized the formation hidden beneath the earth. What a ruthless tactic, Lei Ying gritted his teeth. The devouring spirit life extinguishing formation was an extremely sinister formation from ancient times, capable of turning all living beings within its range into blood mist and forcibly extracting energy from that blood. The formation was so vicious that it had long been destroyed, yet the Soul Clan had somehow managed to deploy it. These formations were set up by the Soul Hall. It seems their overt mission was to collect soul bodies, but secretly, they've been planting these devouring spirit life extinguishing formations across the central plains. Gu Yuan's voice was cold. The Soul Clan has truly prepared thoroughly for this day. With so many devouring spirit life extinguishing formations forcibly extracting energy, the Emperor of the Soul's speed in refining the imperial grade pill will increase significantly. Xiao Yan raised his head, looking at the massive formation in the distant sky. But this formation also requires an enormous amount of energy to sustain, especially in such large numbers. I imagine the Soul Clan has exhausted all its resources for this. They're betting everything on this one move. Let's return and discuss our strategy. The Soul Clan has committed such slaughter that they've made themselves enemies of all. If we can unite all forces, it might still be possible to put up a fight. Gu Yuan waved his hand and then flew towards the headquarters, with everyone hurriedly following. Xiao Yan watched their retreating figures, sighing softly. Although there's strength in numbers, if the Emperor of the Soul truly ascends to the Do-D level, he alone could contend with all the heroes of the world. That is the terrifying power of a Do-D. All we can do is try our best. Just as they returned to the Alliance's headquarters, they saw Zhu Kuan, who had been missing for more than half a month, standing outside the Grand Hall. Behind him stood Ziyin. I didn't expect that guy to have such means. Seeing Xiao Yan and the others, Zhu Kuan also sighed, clearly sensing the actions of the Emperor of the Soul. Gu Yuan nodded silently and said, "Our only option now is to unite as many people as possible. As long as we can break the formation in the sky, the Emperor of the Soul's dream will be shattered." However, as he spoke, even he couldn't help but smile bitterly. Ordinary experts were nothing more than ants in the eyes of the Emperor of the Soul, but how many powerhouses like them could be found across the entire continent of Do-Chi? This is the only way left. If the Emperor of the Soul ascends to Do-D, it's all over, Xiao Yan said with a bitter smile. Zhu Kuan remained silent, rubbing his palms together out of habit. He glanced back at Ziyin, took a deep breath, and then said, "It's not completely hopeless. If he can ascend to Do-D, we can create one ourselves." Create a Do-D? The air seemed to freeze at Zhu Kuan's words. Even Gu Yuan stood there with his mouth agape, staring in disbelief at Zhu Kuan. The silence lasted for quite some time before the tension in the air began to ease slightly. After the initial shock, everyone gradually regained their composure, but the idea still seemed absurd. Creating a Do-D? Even though the words came from Zhu Kuan, it sounded utterly unbelievable. For tens of thousands of years, no Do-D had emerged in the world, making it clear that the legendary level was too distant and unattainable. Are you joking? Yin Jin's voice was dry as he spoke. Despite his skepticism, a flicker of hope unexpectedly stirred in his heart as he asked the question. The situation for the Allied forces was already desperate. If the Emperor of the Soul successfully ascended to Do-D, they would lose any chance of victory. That level of power was beyond anything they could withstand. But if Zhu Kuan's words were true, there might be a way to break this deadlock. Senior Zhu Kuan, this isn't the time for jokes, Xiao Yan hesitated, carefully choosing his words. If Zhu Kuan really had such a method, he wouldn't have remained at his current level for so many years. Gu Yuan said nothing, but his gaze was fixed on Zhu Kuan, hoping to hear something that would confirm this astonishing claim. Seeing the doubt in everyone's eyes, Zhu Kuan couldn't help but smirk. Don't worry, I wouldn't joke about something like this. If fate is on our side, we could indeed see the emergence of a Do-D on our side. Could you explain a bit more? Gu Yuan's voice trembled slightly as he asked. Zhu Kuan slowly lifted his head, his gaze turning to the heavenly flame plaza that he had moved from the ancient emperor's cave mansion. After a moment of silence, he finally said, "Actually, the imperial-grade primordial pill isn't the most precious thing in the ancient emperor's cave mansion." Senior Zhu Kuan, do you mean that thing? Xiao Yan asked thoughtfully, his gaze shifting to the heavenly flame plaza suspended in the sky. Do you think I went through all the trouble of bringing this out just for fun? Zhu Kuan rolled his eyes before waving his sleeve. The space around them distorted, and in the blink of an eye, they found themselves on the vast heavenly flame plaza once again. Xiao Yan's eyes swept over the heavenly flame pillars surrounding the plaza, but he still couldn't sense any energy fluctuations. His gaze eventually settled on the towering stone statue. What's strange about this place? Lei Ying, unable to discern anything unusual after observing for a while, couldn't help but ask. Zhu Kuan stood with his hands behind his back, looking up at the majestic ancient emperor statue with a complicated expression. Do you know the origin or identity of the Tuoshe Ancient Emperor? Everyone was stunned by the question, exchanging puzzled glances before shaking their heads. The Tuoshe Ancient Emperor belonged to a different era, and they only knew his name from ancient texts, with no knowledge of his origins or identity. From what I know, the Tuoshe Ancient Emperor was extremely mysterious. His origins were unknown to anyone. In those days, the continent was filled with powerful individuals, many of whom were striving to break through to the Do-D level, but none succeeded. It was during that time that the Tuoshe Ancient Emperor, previously unknown to anyone, suddenly appeared, Xiao Yan said, his face filled with contemplation as he recalled the ancient records of his clan. It is said that when the Tuoshe Ancient Emperor ascended to the rank of Do-D, the sky bore twin suns, the heavens and earth trembled, and an endless sea of fire descended from the sky, enveloping nearly half of the continent of Do-Chi. This event alarmed all the powerful beings of that time. After the earth-shattering spectacle of his ascension to Do-D, the Tuoshe Ancient Emperor once again vanished without a trace. Logically, since he had reached the Do-D level, his family, those who shared his bloodline, should have instantly awakened their bloodline powers, their strength surging to terrifying levels in a very short time. Those who enjoy the bloodline of the first generation Do-D receive the greatest benefits. So, if a new ancient clan had appeared, it would have caused a massive stir across the continent of Do-Chi. But that didn't happen. So, does that mean the Tuoshe Ancient Emperor had no family, or perhaps no one shared a similar bloodline with him? Xiao Yan frowned slightly as he spoke. On the continent of Do-Chi, bloodline inheritance has always been of paramount importance, especially for peerless experts who rely on bloodlines to pass down their power. But the Tuoshe Ancient Emperor seemed to be completely alone. Why? Yes, that seems to be the case, although it's also possible that no one discovered it. Xiao Yan nodded, and then looked at Zhu Kuan. Is there anything wrong with what I've said? More or less correct. Zhu Kuan stood with his hands behind his back, his gaze fixed on the towering stone statue. Suddenly, he changed the subject. On the Heavenly Flames ranking, there are 23 types of heavenly flames, the most powerful flames in existence. But do you know the name of the flame ranked first? Xiao Yan's heart trembled. The flame ranked first on the Heavenly Flames ranking. He didn't know it, and neither did anyone else. Even Xiao Yan, who was extremely knowledgeable about heavenly flames, had no idea what it was because the flame ranked first didn't even have a name. On the Heavenly Flames ranking, there were 23 flames, but the spot for the first was left blank. No one knew what that top-ranked heavenly flame was, but strangely enough, many alchemists had a vague intuition that something indeed existed above the void-swallowing flame. However, they were clueless about what it was. That first-ranked heavenly flame was like a mystery, shrouded in secrecy and unseen by anyone. Does Senior Zhu Kuan know what the first-ranked heavenly flame is? Xiao Yan couldn't help but ask. Zhu Kuan's face curled into a strange smile as he replied, "In this world, is there really a first-ranked heavenly flame?" This answer stunned everyone once again. They frowned, wanting to refute him, but they suddenly realized that they indeed had no idea what that first-ranked heavenly flame was. Could it be that the so-called first heavenly flame was just a legend? All things in the world have their own spirit, and heavenly flames are no exception. Zhu Kuan seemed to understand the shock in everyone's hearts and spoke slowly. As far as I know, there once was a heavenly flame born from the world itself, taking 1,000 years to form, 10,000 years to gather spirit, and 10,000 more years to cultivate. Over time, it underwent a slight mutation. It is well known that once a heavenly flame takes shape, it rarely leaves its birthplace. But this flame was different. After it gained sentience, it wandered beneath the earth for 1,000 years, feeding on other flames as it traveled through the underground magma. And the flames it devoured were all those ranked on the Heavenly Flames ranking. Of the top 21 flames, all were consumed by it. Devouring flames. Isn't that something only the void-swallowing flame can do? Xiao Yan asked hesitantly. In the world of heavenly flames, it's much like a miniature human empire. Even if you are born into wealth and hold a high position, you can still be overthrown. For heavenly flames, devouring one another is instinctive. However, it's usually the strong devouring the weak, Zhu Kuan sighed. But this flame was different. It devoured flames with caution, knowing when to advance and when to retreat, starting with weaker flames first. After spending thousands of years, it consumed 20 different heavenly flames. Even supreme flames like the void-swallowing flame and the pure lotus demon flame had no choice but to bow down before it. Hearing this, Xiao Yan couldn't help but take a sharp breath. Heavenly flames are incredibly rare, and the idea of devouring 20 of them is unimaginable. For a human, even if one could find these flames, who would dare to consume all 20 of these extremely powerful and volatile heavenly flames? Even for Xiao Yan, with all his experience, such a task would be nearly impossible. Senior Zhu Kuan, do you mean that the so-called first-ranked heavenly flame isn't a specific flame? Instead, it's the one that manages to break free from constraints and emerge victorious from the brutal devouring of other flames? Xiao Yan began to understand. That's correct. However, the devouring process carries a significant risk. The clash between two flames can easily lead to mutual destruction and self-detonation. Therefore, only the flame that successfully devours the other 21 and survives can be considered worthy of the title of the first-ranked heavenly flame, Zhu Kuan explained. Xiao Yan nodded silently. Even using the flame mantra to devour and refine heavenly flames was incredibly dangerous. The natural devouring among heavenly flames was purely instinctual, with a high probability of failure. For a flame to successfully devour 21 other flames and still survive, it was nothing short of a miracle. Such a feat was likely unparalleled in the entire history of the continent of Doqi. I never imagined that the first-ranked heavenly flame would have such a hidden truth, everyone sighed, clearly surprised to learn that the so-called first-ranked heavenly flame wasn't a specific flame but rather the ultimate fusion of 22 heavenly flames into one supreme entity. After its success, that flame named itself as the imperial flame, and spent another 1,000 years cultivating before finally breaking free from the world. Zhu Kuan continued, his eyes reflecting a mix of emotions. And after the imperial flame emerged, it became known by another name across the continent of Doqi. Taking a deep breath, Zhu Kuan fixed his gaze on the towering statue of the ancient emperor in front of him. His soft murmuring voice exploded like thunder in Xiao Yan and the others' ears, leaving them momentarily stunned. In that era, people called it the Tuoshe Ancient Emperor.